Buffy's season 4 finale, Restless, is very heavily debated among the fandom, and it's one of the most controversial episodes of the series. This is largely due to the fact that it is unlike anything the show has ever done before, especially when it comes to a season finale. Restless is different from all other season finales because the big bad is already defeated, and this episode is mostly used as setup for the following seasons. It's some people's favorite episode and some people's least favorite episode. I personally love it because I think it encapsulates everything that I love about Buffy. We have the really deep character growth, the foreshadowing, and great symbolism. The episode offers great insight into character psychology as well as really well done foreshadowing for following seasons, and there is really so much there to analyze once you've already seen the full show and you can go back. The episode has so much to analyze within the context of the whole show, and I think that when you go back and rewatch and truly understand the episode, you gain a new appreciation for it. Now, I want to do a quick disclaimer that while this is an analysis video, it is only my opinion, and I don't think that Restless is the kind of episode where you can put it into a box as one centric idea. I definitely don't think that all of my ideas are the right way to think. These are just my personal interpretations of the episode. And if anyone has an interpretation or idea that is different than mine, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. I definitely don't think that I have encapsulated everything about this episode. I think that it is so deep and so packed with imagery that no one would ever really be able to do that. I mostly just want to make this video because I think that a lot of people don't give Restless the recognition that it deserves and don't talk about how brilliant the writing is. Before we get started, I want to give huge credits to Passion of the Nerd, who I got a lot of these ideas from, as well as various Reddit threads. A big help in making this video was Joss Whedon's DVD commentary, and if you want to look at that for yourself, I'm going to be linking a transcribed version of it because it is really interesting and can tell you a lot of things about this episode. Also, if you're here for my Buffy Iceberg video, welcome. I just want to say thank you so much for all the love on that video. My first ever YouTube video, I did not think that it would get that much attention. I have some things to say about that video that I'll leave until the end. And finally, obviously, huge spoiler warning. If you have only just seen Restless and are watching this video, please wait until you finish the show. I promise it'll make sense. Finish the show, come back to this video, you'll understand. But there's going to be spoilers for the entirety of Buffy because we need to understand this episode within the context of the entire show. I'm going to start by giving all the necessary context because Restless is an episode that is very heavy on where the characters currently are in their lives and is overloaded with foreshadowing for future episodes that I need to go over before we can get into the dreams themselves.
Previously on Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Starting with Willow, she has just kind of come out, although they can't really use the words gay and lesbian on TV yet, but she has a new girlfriend whose name is Tara. Her journey with witchcraft has progressed a lot from the first 3 seasons. That's now her cemented role within the Scoobies. She used to be a very nerdy and shy character. She's now this like outgoing, cool lesbian witch, so she kind of has this new personality and a new style that she's going with. But as with every character at this point in time, she's still figuring herself out, and she used to be very self-conscious, and she's now trying to come out of her shell. This is very important when interpreting Willow's dream. Moving on to Xander, he is a character that has chosen to not go the university route. He is currently living in his parents' basement, and as such feels kind of out of touch with the rest of the Scoobies. Xander has always been the underdog of the Scoobies, but especially in this season, he really feels like he's failing at life, falling behind, that everyone is achieving all these great things, and he's just kind of stuck. A big part of his character has always been fragile masculinity and his insecurities that come with being like a real man. And in seasons 1 and 2, there's a very heavy focus on his unrequited crush for Buffy, which hasn't been mentioned in a really long time. He's currently dating Anya, so they've chosen to forget about that. But that's everything we need to know about Xander's life currently to understand his dream. Giles at this point in time is struggling to kind of balance his 2 lives. He's having a sort of midlife crisis. He's hooking up with this random woman named Olivia, who I forgot her name until researching this video because she's such a minor character. He's feeling very distant from the Scoobies in general, but especially from Buffy. He's kind of forsaken his role as her watcher, and he's always acted as Buffy's father figure in the show prior. And finally, for Buffy, most of her dream in this episode is setting up events in season 5. In season 5, she really struggles coming to terms with what a Slayer is. She feels isolated, and she has a complicated relationship with the violence that she has to do with her role as a Slayer. So a lot of her dream is setting that up. She almost has her fake sister Dawn, and we're gonna get some really good foreshadowing in this episode for that I'll talk about later. And finally, she's feeling very distant from her mother in this season. Her mother really doesn't know a lot about what's going on in her life, seeing as she's moved out of the house. Now, in the episode prior to this, Primeval, where they finally defeat Adam, The Scoobies use a spell to call upon the power of the first Slayer, Sinea, to try and give Buffy extra superpowers so that she's able to defeat Adam. Now, each member of the Scoobies in a way contributed their own strongest aspect and kind of what they bring to the gang. So Willow is Buffy's spirit, Xander is Buffy's heart, Giles is her mind, and Buffy herself is the hand's strength that drive the operation. So this episode follows the first Slayer going around in their dreams and collecting these traits that they put into the spell. Without further ado, we can finally get into the actual episode. Another thing that this episode does very differently from the rest of the show is that the previously on goes straight to the opening credits. When talking about this in the DVD commentary, Joss Whedon said, "I didn't want to put the credits over the dreams because that would take away from the importance of them. So that's the reason for that change in formatting." The gang is fresh from defeating Adam. They're all gathering at Buffy's house to have a little celebration and movie night. This is the first time we see Joyce in a really long time, and she makes a snide comment about finally meeting Riley, which is referring to how distant she now is from Buffy's life.
It was nice meeting you, finally. Did you notice how pointedly I said finally?
So the gang all sit down to watch Apocalypse Now and they fall asleep. Now, when I was scripting this video, I tried really hard to think of what the significance of Apocalypse Now could be, and the only thing that I found in the DVD commentary about it was this. Now, he replayed what is for me, again, a classic dream thing. The movie I remember seeing and really liking is being long, strange, cheesy, and boring. That's why he mentioned Apocalypse Now. So I don't know if there really is some kind of significance to the Scoobies watching Apocalypse Now as their movie. I think it might have just been more that Joss Whedon really liked Apocalypse Now and then had a dream that it was bad. And that's why it's in there. If anyone has any idea as to the meaning of Apocalypse Now in this episode, I'd love to hear it in the comments. I have not seen it. I thought about watching it for this video, but I don't have enough time for that. So if anyone who has seen it can think of any correlation, I'd love to know what it is.
I really feel Apocalypse Now is overrated.
No. It gets better. Men? I remembered that it gets better.
Men, with your sails.
Going into our first dream, we see Willow painting something on Tara's back. So this is actually a Greek poem called Ode to Aphrodite by the lesbian icon Sappho. This is where the term sapphic comes from. So Willow painting this on Tara's back is an allusion to their identities. And I also heard Passion of the Nerd say that it could mean that we don't know Tara's backstory yet because it's a story on her back and it's in a different language. Backstory.
I think I should worry that we haven't found her name.
Who? Miss Kitty?
I think she let us know her name by now.
This scene has been interpreted as being about labeling their relationship.
You don't know everything about me.
While we don't find this out until season 5, at this point in time, Tara genuinely believes that she has demon blood because of what her family has told her. So that line is both referring to how we don't know a lot about Tara as a character yet, and also specifically to that demon thing. In a previous episode, Goodbye Iowa, we saw Willow and Tara attempt to do a demon locator spell, and Tara secretly sabotages it because she herself believes that she is a demon. We then cut to the UC Sunnydale hallway where Xander says this.
Sometimes I think about two women doing a spell, and then I do a spell by myself.
Now, throughout this season, we've been seeing Willow and Tara's witchcraft as a metaphor for their sexuality.
If you wanted to try out some spells with it sometime, I wouldn't say no.
I hope you don't think that I just come over for the spells and everything. I mean, I really like just talking and hanging out with you and stuff.
There's also that one scene where they do a spell and they're holding hands and then Willow leans back and a big O rises above them. Really subtle. So this line is obviously a joke, but also kind of cements how spells this season have been a metaphor for Willow and Tara having sex. Willow is then led into this play, which is kind of a reference to the season 1 episode Nightmares, where she also has a nightmare about public speaking. So again, we can see in her character how she's always been this kind of shy, nerdy, afraid to be in the spotlight girl.
Things that you hold them, you touch them, use them.
Props?
No. Props? Yes.
These lines are very symbolic of the patriarchy, the way that Giles immediately dismisses Harmony and immediately believes Riley, and the way that men are credited for doing the same things that women do. Joss Whedon has confirmed that the play itself was kind of building on traditional gender roles. We have Riley being the cowboy, we have Harmony being a milkmaid, and I think that Willow trying to act in this play is also a kind of metaphor of how many lesbians feel trying to act in traditional gender roles that they really don't feel comfortable in. And the Cheese Man comes out. I'm gonna take a minute to talk about the Cheese Man because he is a recurring character in this episode. So for many years, people speculated what the Cheese Man could possibly be. Joss Whedon himself has come out and said that the Cheese Man is meaningless. He said that he wanted one thing in the dream that was completely meaningless because all dreams have that. However, for the sake of this video, I'm going to be discussing a popular fan theory that states that the cheese represents Buffy. So I'm very well aware that canonically the Cheese Man is meaningless. I just think that for the sake of the video, I want to discuss this theory. I also want to give credits to someone who commented on my Buffy Iceberg video, Mary G1160, who mentioned this scene earlier in season 4. So again, I think the theory that the cheese represents Buffy is pretty plausible. In Willow's dream, the Cheese Man says,
"Made a little space for the cheese slices."
Now Willow has kind of made a little space in her life for Buffy. We then see Willow walking through some red curtains, and I want to take a second to talk about these red curtains because I think there's some things to say. In the DVD commentary, this is what Joss Whedon said. The red curtains many people associate with Twin Peaks, but in fact it was not a direct homage. The red curtains are a somewhat more literal image, again of comfort and safety. The place where she feels safe, where she finds Tara between the folds, the red folds of the curtain. I'm not going to explain anymore because children might listen to this, but I was being vaguely literal and sexual there. So basically, the red curtains are Tara's vagina. Now, while Restless and this scene might not be a direct homage to Twin Peaks, I want to take a minute to talk about similarities that I noticed between Buffy and Twin Peaks. I saw Twin Peaks after I saw Buffy, and my first initial reaction to watching it was, oh my god, this is just like Restless. While it may not have been a direct reference, I think Buffy's kind of unintentional homage was really well written. I definitely get the same kind of dreamy vibe that I got from Twin Peaks in Restless, and I haven't heard anyone else talk about this, but I also thought that the Log Lady and the Cheese Man were kind of similar. Buffy shows up and then takes Willow into their old classroom at Sunnydale High. When Buffy rips off her costume, Willow transforms into herself when she first met Buffy. She has the exact same hair and outfit on.
Willow, nice dress. Good to know you've seen the softer side of Sears.
This is showing us how Willow feels like she can't really escape her past identity, that she's always going to be that shy nerd deep down. Willow does her book report on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and Passion of the Nerd mentioned that the lion is Miss Kitty Fantastico, the witch is Tara or herself, and the wardrobe is the closet. Now, the overall theme of Willow's dream is hiding and wearing a costume, and while a lot of people interpret this to be about her sexuality, Joss Whedon actually says this in the DVD commentary, and the mislead is that what she's talking about is her sexuality, but in fact what she's talking about is the fact that she still considers herself to be, well, a big nerd. While I do think that you can interpret that theme kind of in both ways, that is the canonical meaning, that she's not actually talking about her sexuality and instead talking about hiding her kind of old self.
They will find out, you know. About you.
Your costume is perfect. Nobody's gonna know the truth, you know, about you.
Costume?
You're already in character. I should have done that.
The audience wants to find you, strip you naked, and eat you alive. So hide. Stop that.
Everyone's starting to wonder about you. The real you. If they find out, they'll punish you. I can't help you with that.
Why are you still in costume?
Okay, still having to explain wherein this is just my outfit.
Willow, everybody already knows.
Come on, put your back into it. A watcher scoffs at gravity.
Moving on to Xander's dream, we start with this opening line from Giles,
Oh, I'm beginning to understand this now. It's all about the journey, isn't it?
which I think is just flat out telling you the point of the episode. It's all about the journey. Xander goes upstairs and meets MILF Joyce. Xander in the past has always kind of had a problem with objectifying his female friends and all the women around him, so I think that this is pretty spot on for his personality.
I move pretty fast. You know, a man's always after.
Conquest?
I'm a conquistador.
You sure it isn't comfort?
I'm a comfortador also.
However, while Xander's character in the show is kind of thought of as someone who's only looking for sex, this line is meant to tell the audience that he is actually lonely and looking for love, so he's not only after conquest, he's after comfort too. We then see Xander go to the bathroom, and there are scientists that are literally observing his manhood, so this is again a reference to Xander's fragile masculinity and the way that he feels like his masculinity is always being criticized and judged by others. We then see a recurring image in his dream of all doors leading back to his basement.
Spike's like a son to me.
This is kind of indirect tabula rasa foreshadowing because that's the episode where Spike and Giles believe they are father and son, plus Spike is wearing the same outfit that he wears in tabula rasa.
Way ahead of you, big brother.
Brother.
This line kind of shows two of Xander's biggest fears. One, that everyone else is way ahead of him, and two, that Buffy sees him as a big brother, that he'll forever be in the friend zone. This is the last time that the show really mentions Xander's crush on Buffy, so that's kind of their way of closing up the plotline.
I've been thinking about getting back into vengeance.
This is some really obvious foreshadowing. Anya in season 6 gets back into vengeance. Xander then sees Willow and Tara in the back, and they're in some very typical lesbian porno outfits. To me, this was always a commentary on the lesbian fetishization that teenage boys kind of grow up with, and that Xander's brain needs to use pornography and stereotypes and fantasies to understand his friend's new identity. Once again, all doors lead to the basement. The cheese man shows up and says,
These will not protect you.
Buffy can't protect Xander all the time. We see this especially in season 7 when he loses his eye. Then Giles and Anya start speaking French, trying to give him instructions, which obviously he can't understand. This is another symbol of how he's behind from everyone else and how he feels like he's stuck and everyone else is achieving all these great things, moving on ahead of him.
Where are you from, Harris? Well, the basement mostly.
Again, all doors lead to his basement. He can't escape where he currently is in life. We see a brief flash of being in Giles' house where the Scoobies are having a meeting without him. While this is a very brief moment, I think that it reflects on Xander's insecurity that he is useless within the Scoobies.
What the hell is wrong with you? You won't come upstairs? What are you, ashamed of us? Your mother's crying her guts out.
Xander's family dynamic has never really been discussed that much in the show, other than various comments about like his drunk uncle. This scene kind of alludes to a more sinister family dynamic for Xander, and while it's never touched on, I think that it's perfectly reasonable to assume that Xander has a very complicated home life, even just from this being part of his nightmare. The overall theme of Xander's dream is being left behind and everyone being ahead of him.
Anyway, they all left a while ago.
Oh, I should probably go catch up. I'm going places.
I'm way ahead of you.
The others have gone on ahead.
Your time is running out.
I've hired myself out as an attraction.
Giles' dream opens with a scene of him hypnotizing Buffy with a watch, because he's a watcher. It's a watch, get it?
Don't you think it's a little old-fashioned?
This is the way women and men have behaved since the beginning.
To me, this is a pretty obvious reference to the season 3 episode Helpless with the Watcher's test, because Giles is hypnotizing Buffy and Buffy believes it to be old-fashioned, with Giles using tradition as an excuse. Buffy laughs childishly, and we then see her kind of acting as Giles and Olivia's kid.
I am a vampire. Oh, you stink me.
I haven't got any treats.
Giles has always been kind of her appointed father figure.
Hey! Come on! You're gonna miss everything!
Because Giles is so distant from the Scoobies trying to balance his two lives, he's gonna miss everything. You can see Olivia crying next to a stroller. To me, this is kind of a symbol of how Giles and Olivia will never have children, because Giles feels that that role has already been filled by Buffy, and the kind of consequences that this has.
Hi, I'm currently editing, but I just thought of another possible interpretation for this. So earlier in the carnival scene, we see Olivia using the stroller, and it's kind of alluded to that it's meant for Buffy. So this could also potentially be foreshadowing Buffy's death, with Olivia crying over the stroller that's meant for Buffy, similar to how everyone cries over her dead body in the final scene of The Gift.
You gotta make up your mind, Rubes. What are you wasting time for?
To me, this is about how Giles has to make up his mind about his path in life.
I wear the cheese. It does not wear me.
Honestly, you meet the most appalling sort of people.
In many ways, Giles is still very dependent on Buffy, but Buffy is not dependent on him. He wears Buffy, she does not wear him. We then cut to the Bronze for a Scooby meeting.
Something's after us. It's like some animal force.
That used to be us.
This really shows how the Scoobies have fallen out and they've lost a lot of their power because of it. The primal force used to be them when they were together and strong, and Giles needs to help them get that back. Everyone expects him to have the answers because that's the role that he's had in the group for the entire show. Giles then starts singing, which, first of all, bars.
I've got to warn Buffy. There's every chance she might be next. And Xander and Willow. And try not to bleed on my couch. I've just had it steam cleaned.
And second of all, I always thought that this was showing how he's trying to balance his two lives. He's trying to help the Scoobies, give them information, while also living his little rock star life. The overall theme of Giles' dream is missing out and feeling detached from his watcher duties and distant from Buffy.
I'm so sorry, I'm late. There's a great deal going on. And all at once.
Do you know this is your fault?
I'm very busy. I have a gig myself, you know.
Please run for your lives.
This could be trouble. We better make a fort. I'll get some pillows.
Finally, we cut to Buffy's dream. It begins in her university dorm, but she then wakes up in her childhood bedroom. To me, this was foreshadowing of her moving back to her house in season 5 and becoming more connected with her family and dropping out of UC Sunnydale. Now it's time to talk about dawn foreshadowing. This is one of my favorite things to talk about when discussing this episode because I think it is so brilliantly done and so interesting to look back on after finishing the series. Episode this year's Girl, where Faith wakes up out of her coma, we see a dream of her and Buffy making a bed.
That's just with little sis coming. I know. So much to do before she gets here.
Faith and I just made that bed. For who?
I thought you were here to tell me.
The bed is of course made for Dawn, her little sister, but Buffy doesn't know that yet. Buffy then looks at the clock and it says 7:30.
It's so late.
Oh, that clock's completely wrong.
Now we have to go back to yet another dream sequence in the season 3 episode Graduation Day, again of Buffy and Faith, where Faith says,
Little Miss Muffet counting down from 7:30.
As of Graduation Day, it was then exactly 730 days before Buffy's sacrifice for Dawn in The Gift. And in season 5, we see one of Glory's crazy victims refer to Dawn as Curds and Whey.
I know you. Curds and Whey.
This is a reference to the Little Miss Muffet nursery rhyme, hence why Faith says Little Miss Muffet. However, as of Restless, it's no longer 730 days. I think that's why Buffy says it's so late.
You think you know what's to come? What you are? You haven't even begun.
Right off the bat, we see really good setup for Buffy's personal journey in season 5. And I also want to add that this exact kind of speech is said by Dracula in the season 5 premiere.
You think you know what you are, what's to come. You haven't even begun.
We then go back to school and Buffy finds Joyce living in the walls. At first, Buffy shows concern. Joyce mentions, well, you could break through the wall, but Buffy gets distracted and abandons her. This is very symbolic of how their relationship has been this season, with Buffy really neglecting Joyce and their relationship. We then get this really weird scene between Buffy, Riley, and a human Adam. In this scene, Buffy is referred to as a killer.
Hey there, killer.
And this is something that she really struggles with in season 5, again with her relationship with her role as a slayer.
Spirit guide told me that death is my gift. Guess that means a slayer really is just a killer after all.
Buffy then opens her weapon bag to reveal a big bag of mud, and while I might be missing something here, I kind of interpret this as Buffy can no longer just rely on her weapons to help her. She has to first understand herself and use herself to fight the evil that is coming. However, if anyone else has any other ideas as to what this could be about, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Buffy then goes to the desert that we've been seeing flashes of throughout the episode to meet the first Slayer.
I have no speech, no name. I live in the action of death. The blood cry, the penetrating wound. I am destruction, absolute, alone.
The Slayer.
The first Slayer's speech is really a reflection of how Buffy sees her role as a Slayer and how she feels so isolated and just like a force of destruction.
The Slayer does not walk in this world.
I walk. I talk. I shop. I sneeze. I'm gonna be a fireman when the floods roll back. There's trees in the desert since you moved out, and I don't sleep on a bed of bones.
Buffy's I am not alone speech is really interesting to me. This is kind of her countering everything that the first Slayer has just said she has to do and feel because she's a Slayer. And we see this throughout Buffy's entire life. She's never really followed the Slayer protocol. You can see this especially when she talks to Kendra.
But the Slayer must work in secret for security.
Of course. But with Buffy, however, it's some flexibility is required.
She still has friends, she cares for her family a lot, she has a life and she cares about the people in it. So Buffy is kind of breaking through that pre-assigned idea of what a Slayer should be.
I'm gonna be a fireman when the floods roll back.
This line is really interesting and it took me a while to figure it out, but I think that it's making a biblical reference. Now, I have a very loose understanding of the Bible, so I'm sorry if any of this is inaccurate. Feel free to correct me in the comments, but I think this is referencing the story of Noah's Ark, that the first purge will be with water, the floods, and when the floods roll back, the second purge will be with fire. So when the floods roll back and the earth is on fire, Buffy is going to be a fireman, saving the world after this purge.
There's trees in the desert since you moved out.
To me, this line refers to how a desert is so vast and empty and therefore feels really lonely and isolating. Again, how Buffy feels because she's a Slayer. So trees growing in it means that she's no longer alone.
And I don't sleep on a bed of bones.
I don't sleep on a bed of bones to me means that Buffy doesn't see herself as just a killer, and she doesn't neglect others in crisis.
No friends, just to kill. We are alone.
Again, having to conform to this idea that Slayers have no friends, no social life, and have to feel isolated for their entire lives.
That's it. I'm waking up.
Now, in Buffy's dream, the cheese man doesn't say anything, he just gestures. So again, I think this is pointing to the idea that Buffy could represent the cheese.
It's over. We don't do this anymore.
Buffy has never really been one for tradition, and we'll see this especially in the season 7 finale Chosen, where she completely changes the way that the Slayer line works. So I think this is really reflective of her character trying to break tradition, break past these boundaries. Buffy and the first Slayer have a final battle, and finally everyone wakes up. The overall theme of Buffy's dream is her destiny, especially in relation to season 5, and her complicated relationship with her role as a Slayer. Now, right before the credits roll, Buffy goes back to her bedroom and takes a very long look at her bed, the bed that is supposedly made for Dawn, while Tara's speech plays in the background.
You think you know what's to come? What you are? You haven't even begun.
This is really on the nose Dawn foreshadowing, as again, that speech is exactly what Dracula says to her in the season 5 premiere. And with that, those are my thoughts on Buffy season 4 finale Restless. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any other thoughts, please comment them. I'd love to have some discussions. I think that it's really fun to have this kind of episode where we can really unpack things, dig deep, discuss different theories. Full disclaimer, I'm not sure if my next video is going to be Buffy related. I might do something a little bit different, but we'll see. And that concludes my Restless analysis. Now, I want to use the last couple minutes of this video to talk about my Buffy iceberg video. I just want to say again, thank you for all of the attention on that. I was not expecting it at all. I'm still very new to YouTube, trying to figure things out. I just want to say I know that that video is far from perfect. There are definitely a lot of inaccuracies, and I want to thank everybody who has pointed them out to me in the comments, especially some of you were so nice about it. Thank you. And I mean, who knows, maybe in a couple of years I'll do a revised Buffy iceberg with all of your feedback, because some of you also mentioned things that weren't in the iceberg that I would love to cover in the future. But for now, thank you for putting up with me. I tried to take a lot of your feedback and put it into this video to make higher quality content. Yeah, thank you so much for following along my very beginner YouTube journey, and I really appreciate all of the feedback and nice comments.